Hey, it's Tay with Mom on the Spectrum, and we are back today with my favorite guest, the one and only Barack Obama. This is my husband, Scott, and he was in our first video that we did just last week, Marriage and Autism. And if you watch that video, at the very end, he had an idea in the video for another video, and that's what we're shooting today.
This is it.
What was your idea?
Top 10 things not to do in a relationship with a neurodiverse spouse.
I'm really interested to hear how this goes.
It's gonna get cray. Do I get my own theme song? You should have different like. You should have one of those classic like 90s intros where it's just me like posing, featuring Scotty
as Barack Obama. Channel, if you could please hit that red subscribe button. That's the best way you can support me and help me continue creating free videos for you, which I love doing. Special shout out to Jared for all of your support and encouragement. I love your comments. Thank you so much for watching. Last thing you need to know before I turn it over to this guy, I am 32 years old. I received my autism diagnosis last year at 31 years old, and so it's been a year since my diagnosis, and he already has so much wisdom and insight to share. I read the list that he came up with and I was like blown away. So with that said,
and first of all, there's a caveat. I'm an English teacher, so don't take any of this as gospel truth. These are just observations that I've had. And also, because I think you remind people frequently that if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. If some of these don't fit the bill, don't panic. This is what I wish. I wish that past me from a year ago, cute, young little 32-year-old Scott, could have watched this video. Okay, so these are not in order of importance, I don't think. Maybe they are. Maybe it's like a Freudian. Anyway, here we go. Are you going to do some kind of like drum roll or something like that? Number 1, here we go. Top 10 things not to do with your neurodiverse spouse is speak in abstract terms while planning or setting an expectation. Something I've learned is that if I speak in abstracts or roundabout terms, it's not like it blows up. It's not like it results in a fight. It just
creates little tiny frustrations all over the place.
I can feel your tension if I say, I'll be home soon. Something that Taylor likes if I give her very specific instructions. If I say, I am showering at the gym right now and I will be home in about 15 minutes.
That helps me. I just like to know what to expect. Or if you say like, I'm going to go pick stuff up for dinner at the grocery store, I want to know like what you're picking up so I can think about how to plan around that.
This is a good tip. Take this to heart. If you're asking me about something, how did the talk with the doctor go? You really like it when I give you like a bulleted list response. So if it's something like, the doctor said X, Y, and Z, put them out in actual bullets on a text. This is what happened. Boom, 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 boom.
We communicate a lot through text. Like we don't talk on the phone very much.
We're millennials.
I mean, obviously we live together, but like when you're out running errands and stuff, we mostly just communicate via text.
In GIFs.
Oh my gosh. We say GIFs. I know some people say GIFs.
Get over it.
I feel like as an autistic person, it helps me communicate emotions so much. So just a little tidbit.
Communicating in concrete terms, like 15 minutes, I'm showering right now, I'll be leaving the gym soon. It doesn't feel like, Taylor's keeping tabs on me. It's me realizing that Taylor has a more difficult time with unknowns, and that when I speak specifically, I'm calming that frustration or concern.
Yeah.
That's really helpful. So don't see it as like keeping tabs, because it's not.
It just helps bring calm, like you said.
Yeah. All right, number 2. Treating special interests or concerns as trivial or unimportant. If you're in a relationship with a neurodiverse person, chances are they have a special interest. Taylor's special interests range from health to psychology, basically any way to improve yourself. There's also certain things that Taylor likes in terms of rituals, safety and security, making sure doors are locked, shutting the blinds after the sun goes down, things like that. Those things, I think, prior to your diagnosis, used to
go for it.
Drive me crazy. It would just
This is a safe space.
It would just be frustrating because it'd be like I would step out of the car and you'd be like, "You lock the doors?" And I'm like, the door's open. Like I'm shutting the door right now. Things like that would bother me, and I think it's because I was focusing on the act itself, and so I was treating the act of door locking as something that was trivial, not as important as I thought you were making it seem.
And I was going to mention too, like with the blinds, for me, if you are neurodiverse, you might notice noticed that lights have more effect on you. It's not necessarily even a privacy thing. If the lighting of the room is different, where my eyes have to do a lot of adjusting, I can't hear what people are saying. I can't participate in any conversation. When the light changes in the room in the evening and it goes to dusk where there's not enough light to really like see, I cannot have a conversation. So closing the blinds and turning the lamps on, I have to do that in order to be able to shut off and be able to like relax for the evening.
Oftentimes, I think for neurodiverse people, if there's a certain thing that they're fixated on, it's more than about just that fixation. I think that was number 2, just because it's helping me realize that oftentimes the actions that we see, there's way more behind them.
Shout out Aaron's thinking putty. This stuff is awesome. You can like rip it apart. It's really cool, and it changes colors with heat. So like after you've been after you've been playing with it for a while.
Emerald sky.
This is not an ad. Okay, number 3.
All right, number 3 is expecting neurotypical social interaction if we have multiple social things on the calendar. It's bad. It's not even like the event will go poorly. It's like the whole week. I realize that you're thinking about it, you're planning it. And Taylor bakes, and so everyone's always like, Taylor, you just make your cupcakes. They'll be delicious. Just do it. And so you're thinking about making cupcakes all week, and what's going on with the kids, and just all the factors that lead up into the event you're thinking about. Keep those things to a minimum. So that helps us a lot. And that's okay. You know, we do lots of social things independently too.
Yeah, well, you do social things independently while I stay home and crochet and stay under my weighted blanket.
I hang out with friends at night. But I think that's something that's really helpful. And I think that prior to your diagnosis, it would frustrate me. We don't do things. We don't go out and hang out with friends and things like that. And oftentimes in those situations, it would lead to tension between us because you would have shutdowns when we would go out and you wouldn't talk a whole lot. And because we didn't realize that you had reached your limit.
This can be like a sub point on this, but that was like one thing that we would argue about a lot is after we would leave a social situation, I'd be really upset because I would be like, you weren't making room for me in the conversation. Because I mean, he's great at guiding conversation, but he's also really good at creating space for other people. I didn't feel that, not because he wasn't creating space for me, but I'm autistic, and so I don't know how to join a small group environment. I don't know how to join a small group discussion. That's another video for another day, but that was one thing that we had a lot of trouble about. Like, we would leave a social situation and I'd be like, I didn't get to talk at all. Yeah. But it wasn't his fault. It was because I didn't know how to do that. Now we know. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Number 4, things not to do in a relationship with a neurodiverse person is take it personally when you don't receive neurotypical levels of interaction. In terms of physical interaction that Taylor and I have, whether it's like hugs, affection, anything like that, I think a lot of tension that we've had in the past is that I have these expectations that have kind of been set really just by like culture and society and TV and movies. Whenever you aren't in those types of moods to reflect that type of interaction, often I would take it personally, and immediately what I would think would be like, well, what's wrong with me? What am I doing wrong that's making you not want to interact with me, whether that's talking or any type of physical affection?
I'm like trying to be conversational. I've met my eye contact limit. Okay, we can just like look forward and back a little. I can do this, okay?
So oftentimes I would take it personally when you wouldn't show affection or wouldn't seem to engage in conversation whenever we're sitting down to dinner or something like that. And I would think that something was wrong with me, saying things wrong. I forgot to do something. Something that's really been helpful for me through this whole process is realizing like I am not doing wrong things. Yeah. It's almost like I have self-talk. So I'll say, okay, based off of the history that I have with Taylor, I know for a fact that she loves me and wants to spend time with me and wants me to be around her. So mark off the list that she hates you and wants you to die.
He doesn't think that.
I don't think that at all. Instead, what I tell myself is, okay, this is about the way that Taylor's brain is wired. And for our situation, I know that oftentimes if you're going through like a shutdown, there's going to be certain types of stressors that are going on. You have a really hard time calming down if there's a lot of dishes. So it's like understanding the situation. What are the stressors and how can I eliminate those things? And those can kind of bring you back to more of a homeostasis. Number 5 of the things that you should not do with your neurodiverse spouse is to try and change your spouse. That seems really simple. Don't do it. But let me back up for a second. I think that oftentimes we see a problem and we ask ourselves, what is the solution? What can I do to change the way things are? So something that's helped me through a lot of books that I've read is realizing my spouse is neurodiverse. That is reality. And there's no way that I can change the wiring of her brain or my brain. So these things that are causing us tension and that are difficult in our marriage, they're not just going to go away. It's not like you can change the way these things are. So instead, the question is, how can you move forward? And then what can we change? Is it our expectations? Is it certain behaviors that we have? Is it the certain way that our schedule is organized? What is it that you and your spouse can control? So I think for me, a lot of it has been expectations and things like scheduling. A lot of the things that you want or desire in a particular relationship, you might have to grieve those things and let them go. And that's really hard. That's incredibly difficult. But also it opens you up to the reality of what is. And you can stay positive about those things and try to realize that there are other amazing aspects to the relationship that you didn't even realize were there. Okay, number 6 of the top 10 things not to do in a relationship with a neurodiverse spouse is be flaky.
Don't be flaky.
Don't be flaky. Now, that's just good advice for like any human. Don't be flaky. Person. But it particularly agitates you when I flake out on something. I don't intend to be flaky about particular things. I just have this mindset of like, I'll get around to it. It's not that I didn't do it. I just haven't done it yet. I'm realizing that when Taylor needs help with something and she asks me to do it, first of all, that's difficult for you to do, to say, hey, can you help me with X? It goes a long way to take care of it as soon as I can.
It frees up space in my mind.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It like frees up bandwidth for you.
And I feel like I can relate to you more easily when there's not like stuff in the middle that I'm trying to remember that gets done.
Yeah, and I think like as a little side note here, so much of our relationship is realizing that your bandwidth is limited and like with the way that your brain functions, you're taking everything in. It's just information overload. Something that's helped us in our relationship is identifying how can I free up some bandwidth for you? What is it that I can take care of to kind of free up your mind? Not flaking out and actually following through quickly on things that you've asked are helpful.
Yeah. It's like, you know, just the image of a cup, and let's say my cup is full.
I was going to use that metaphor later.
Oh, later. Okay.
No, you're fine. Keep talking.
Okay. Once that cup starts pouring out, like
it runneth over. You
know, if the kids have a school event or if we have a social event or whatever, like the cup starts being emptied really, really quickly. And so at the bottom of that cup, that's like meltdown, or if it's prolonged empty, then that's a shutdown. It takes me a really long time to come back from that. And so keeping it from emptying all the way out is really important. Okay, numero 7.
Number 7 of things that you should not do with your neurodiverse spouse is to ask questions while your spouse is doing something.
Oh, don't do that. That fries my brain.
Yeah. I've read in this book, it's called like the Secret Rule Book to Aspergers. Yeah.
Isn't it Jennifer O'Toole?
Hook? We should probably look it up.
Jennifer Cook O'Toole.
She has this really interesting book for kids that are on the spectrum, like social rules to follow. And it's a good book.
I'll put the link in the description.
And one of the rules that she has for kids that are on the spectrum, which works for adults too, is to keep in mind that if someone has a busy body, they have a busy mind. Like for anyone that has kids, you know this is true. It's like you're hunched over the oven. Dad, look at this. Look, you're just like, oh my God. And, you know, that's frustrating for anyone, but I'm realizing too with neurodiverse people, particularly my wife and my son, is that gear shifting. Like if they've got a gear shift from thinking, okay, I'm worried about, you know, the casserole that I'm baking and you're asking me about the water bill. No, it's just not a good situation. Really, just wait.
And just a fun autistic tidbit for you to know, the part of your brain that controls gear shifting is called the anterior cingulate gyrus, or the ACG.
It's located.
Like, wow, this is cool.
Are you done? Was that you?
Yeah, that's it. I just wanted to tell you what it's called because it's cool.
Obviously, like sometimes you have to talk to your spouse when they're doing things because it's a pressing matter. But if it can wait, just like...
Or even just asking a question like, hey, do you have 30 seconds where I can ask you a question?
Yeah, or like letting you know, hey, can I talk to you when you have a moment?
Yeah, that's much better.
And we want to teach our kids that too.
Yeah.
Busy body, busy mind.
Good luck, right?
Number 8 of things not to do with
Things
your
not to do.
neurodiverse spouse is make sure that your neurodiverse spouse has little to no alone time. For a while, Taylor was stay-at-home mom. She was homeschooling kids during this crazy world of quarantine. I would go out to my office, get all my work done, and I would come home and...
There's so many unsaid things in the look you just...
they've been said. Taylor would be in a place that it just wasn't a very good place.
It wasn't fun for anyone.
Essentially, we've realized through Taylor's therapist especially too, is realizing that Taylor needs a lot of alone time to process and catch up. And this is something I was going to go back to earlier with your metaphor about the cup. Something my therapist had taught me is that lots of times with neurodiverse people, in terms of their stimulation, whether it's physical or even just like listening to things, it's like the day starts with an empty cup and each touch will start to like fill up the cup a little bit more. And when you have 2 kids that are a little clingy and talk a lot, that cup is just like filling up so quickly.
How I talked about it earlier, like I think it makes even more sense for me to think about it spilling out the other way, because like I rest and I get recharged and I have energy, and then I think like as the day goes, like all of my energy just starts leaving. Like I like thinking about it that way because I only have so much to give, and then like when it's empty, it's just completely empty.
Oh, so we're coming at it from different angles.
Yeah.
You're like a glasses empty person. So either way, there's just a limited amount of stimulation that you can have before you go into a shutdown or a meltdown.
Or stop talking.
Alone time has been really helpful. We were talking about things that you can control. We restructured our schedule so Taylor has the afternoons by herself, and that has been really helpful, I feel like.
It's completely changed my life. I wake up and I have more excitement about the day. I know that I can commit to a morning of attention with the kids and taking care of their needs.
And that's when I'm gone. I'm gone in the mornings.
He's gone in the morning. And then in the afternoon, I know we're very lucky to be able to have worked this situation out right now, and it's going to change for us soon. But having an afternoon every weekday where I know that I can have some hours alone to myself, it makes completely just all the difference in the world. It's amazing. I love it. Yeah, alone time is like a reset button.
Numero 9 of things you should not do.
Don't do this.
In a relationship with a neurodiverse spouse or significant. You don't have to be married.
Partner.
Assume that your partner has not, does not, or will not mask around you. Something that Taylor has mentioned, and that also she's spoken about with her therapist, is that oftentimes people, especially people that are diagnosed later in life, will say things like, I feel like I'm becoming more autistic. And essentially what that statement really means, and you can correct me here, is that you're not necessarily becoming more autistic, but you are learning more of who you really are, and therefore are needing to mask less and less. And present your authentic self. You're not so worried about the social norms and structures that society expects of you. You can just be yourself. I think something that was surprising to me is that once Taylor learned she was autistic and we realized that she had been masking in social situations, it would lead to new types of behaviors. So whether that's understanding she's not going to be in lots of social situations, or she's not going to speak up as much in social situations, it would lead to different types of behaviors that if you're not expecting as the partner of a neurodiverse person can seem kind of jarring. You're thinking, wait, what the heck? This is different. This is a whole new set of behaviors that you're practicing here that I didn't foresee. It's not that your spouse is necessarily changing, because that's not what's happening. They're just stepping more into the person who they really are. So I think it's an expectation that as your partner is growing more in a sense of self, those things that have been masking behaviors, those start kind of falling away a little bit. So it's not that at any point your spouse has been inauthentic, they're just becoming more authentic. Also, something else that I think is important, but I feel like it's hard for me to explain, but I'll try.
You've got this.
Okay, once you learn that your significant other is on the spectrum, is neurodiverse, and those masking behaviors start to kind of fall away, I think oftentimes when there are stressful situations for a neurodiverse person, particularly like a social situation, you might see traits coming up that you're like, you're masking a little bit.
Oh.
To whether, you're like being like affectionate or, touching someone, or just more engaged and more expressive.
Like you can call me on my BS. You're like
right. And it's like it's not BS, but it's just I think they're
like a coping mechanism.
They're more performative for you
Yeah.
than they would be for a neurotypical person.
Yeah.
But also, it's like our society is built for people that are neurotypical to where they're doing those things naturally. What I have noticed is that, especially in social situations, you'll tend to slip into those masking tendencies a bit more. Just support your partner in any way that you can and realize that it's going to look different.
Do you feel like the masking behavior is like directed towards you in social situations? Or are you talking about me masking for other people?
I mean, sometimes. I think more so for other people. You're much more expressive.
Yeah.
In social situations.
It's exhausting. And that's also because I just don't feel it. Like with you, I feel safe and I know that I don't have to mask. But like with other people, I haven't had that same practice of like I can just not have all this expression and everything. So yeah, it's definitely social situations just throw everything in a blender. We made it to number 10.
Yes. Number 10 of the top 10 things not to do in a relationship with a neurodiverse partner is assume that your partner is a problem to fix. And that's going to seem, I think, pretty basic. But I think oftentimes, especially in the way that our culture thinks about mental health, is to think that anyone who isn't neurotypical is a problem. At the very beginning of the process of learning that you're autistic, my approach was more so like, well, how do we fix these behaviors, or how do we fix these problems that are causing us tension? And that is the wrong way of approaching it. You're not going to fix the way that someone's brain is wired. And the longer that we've lived with your diagnosis, I feel like the more benefits we've seen from it. And we have a really vibrant relationship because of your neurodiversity. And instead of asking, how do I fix my spouse, which is not something I think a lot of us would vocalize, instead we should be asking, how can I enjoy my neurodiverse spouse? A neurodiverse brain really is a gift. It's a completely different way of looking at the world that brings a lot of idiosyncrasies and differences, but definitely makes life interesting. I think that's a much better way of approaching it. If you are neurotypical and you're watching this and you have a neurodiverse spouse, give yourself lots of grace and stop putting so much weight on your shoulders to fix stuff, because you're not going to fix it. What needs to happen is an acceptance of reality. I'm neurotypical. My partner is neurodiverse. What does that mean moving forward? It requires, I think, oftentimes for neurotypical people to let go of these expectations that culture has handed us, because it's not realistic, and honestly, it's not really what you want. You have to find what works for your situation. And don't be afraid to throw out the script. Even if I've said things in this video that you're like, that doesn't fit me. Throw it out. I don't care. I'm an English teacher, right? Throw it out. Give yourself grace. Figure out what works in your relationship and do your best to enjoy your significant other without having to put the weight on your shoulders to fix anything.
And I wanted to say too, like as the neurodiverse partner, like something that I would really love and is good for me is for you to give me really clear boundaries. You know, you're talking about I get stressed when there's dishes out and stuff. Well, just because I'm stressed, like you might have had a really hard day and you might not want to do the dishes. You being able to say like, hey, I know that there's dishes out. I just need to sit on the couch. I want to hear that from you because you work so hard for us and our family, and so that's really good for me to hear like, hey, I know there's some stuff that needs to be done, but right now, like I've kind of just hit my limit and I really need to sit down, because that helps me know where you're at, because again, it's kind of hard for me to read you because of autisticness. So as a neurodiverse partner, I just want to say like to the neurotypical people, please communicate clear boundaries, because that's really helpful for us. And you don't have to be responsible for keeping all of our stressors subdued. You know, that's a really, really full-time job, and we appreciate all the help that we can get, but you can't put that on your shoulders either, because that's an impossible job to constantly be managing. And then lastly, I just wanted to say the two of us here together, I feel like we've been communicating well during this video, but I want you to know that this is YouTube and he did plan this video. We talked about it a little bit, but like we definitely do have communication struggles in our life. Though this video might make it look like we're really put together and communicate really well, yeah, we do in a lot of ways, but we also still do have a lot of hiccups. It's just, you know, a video that we wanted to make for y'all that we've spent some time working on together. So in the spirit of authenticity on the web, which is hard to come by, I just always feel like letting you know the truth behind what's really happening. If you liked this video, if you could give it a thumbs up, that would be super awesome. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel. If you want to comment and leave a question for this guy, I'm sure that he'd be more than happy to write back with some more feedback. Thanks for making the list.
Dad of the spectrum.
Dots. Theme song in progress. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye.
Okay. Smash that like button.